these people on the benches. They're so nice to us. Now, we were getting into a bit of a chat. I'm Stanford Chidge, and this is the Chelsea FanCast. Bit TV grammar for you before I get carried away. But we were talking before the break about David Luiz, the man with curly hair, and we were trying to get to the bottom of Paul Crowder's loathing of him, and I've decided that it's because he's jealous. Because Paul doesn't have a mane of curly hair.
It is the hair.
But you can do the Miley Cyrus tongue thing, can't you? There we go.
Yep.
He learned that from Gene Simmons in Kiss when he was out in a bar with him in LA. Isn't that right?
Yeah, Gene always keeps a bucket of blood with him. So
he does. He does. He's brilliant. I
Blood,
know. Someone for the teenagers there, Lauren. Sorry, you're a bit young for Kiss. Anyway, I didn't mean it in that kind of way. That sounded a bit wrong, didn't it?
It did, no.
It sounded very Arsene Wenger-ish,
It was a very rock and roll thing.
It was a bit. Anyway, look, we were talking about Luiz, and I think that actually the serious point is that we were saying, well, you know, it looks like Jose's kind of decided that Luiz and Terry is his preferred back two. In which case, what does that mean for Gary Cahill, who I basically think has been a very solid performer, and let's face it, he's England's first choice centre-back, which is a bit worrying if we don't value him. I don't know, what do you think?
I think Cahill was under no illusions it would be hard to actually become like a regular first team centre-back. I don't think he's... I don't really think he can complain basically about it, to be honest with you. He was a bit fortunate last year when people like Terry were injured, and Luiz obviously experimented more in defensive midfield, but generally I'd be surprised if he was unhappy with things. I mean, Terry, let's be honest, we don't expect him to play week in, week out. He has been so far.
Although he's clearly Jose's first choice.
And also, I don't think anyone expected him to be quite as brilliant as he has been.
Terry?
Yeah, he's hands down been Chelsea's best player so far this season.
I would have done, because I spent most of the last season on the FanCast going about him near the end of the season. Now, he was an awful season for him because of Benitez and his injuries. But I think
you might find that is a word that's on the banned list, Darren.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's under the
under many different guises, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's funny actually how many times it crops up.
I think as the third centre back, Cahill's going to get a lot of game time, especially as we're playing 2 games a week most weeks. And as Darren says, you know, JT is not going to play every week.
Just one point about Luiz that you were saying, Paul, about he's a bit of a joker, but he also does keep a lot of team spirit through it, and he's good with the actual players. Like when Matta missed the penalty in Munich, he was the first to go over. When Lukaku did in Prague, he was the first one to go over. And I think he is very good with the players and everything. And I think he does bring them together, like Terry does as well. So
discipline. He's just got to sort that. It's that discipline. If he stops doing the silliness, and if he's going to parade forward, that there's a plan to that. It's not just like I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
That everyone knows he's going to go, and the team's ready for it.
But I agree with you. I always think though that with Ramires, because they're both Brazilian, they know each other's game. Do you think that Ramires would sort of cover him a bit more when he does do these stupid runs forwards? Because as long as someone stops back. But yeah, I don't think
it was easier for Carvalho because he used to do that all the time. You used to see him sort of bounding down the pitch into space, and
he had funny hair too.
Yeah, but that was because you know that Makelele was going to
slot in. Then Makelele would do left back, right back. He'd go anywhere. I mean, that Bolton when Lampard scored the second and Carvalho's up with him, no striker or midfielder was there.
Carvalho was offside.
Man United.
That shows just how far up he was. He was offside.
The third goal against Man United, when we won the league, same thing. You know, those 3 of them rolling forward, and he's.
See, I love a bit of that.
I do, and that's fine. It's like when you're.
I tell you what, you know, talking of recent ricks, and I forget who it might have been against Norwich actually, but when he tried to backheel it, and he backheeled it straight to the. I mean, things like that.
Right.
You don't do that.
No.
You get it into touch if you're struggling to keep the ball. Don't do a backheel.
Don't try and get clever.
That's silly, and I would totally agree with you about that.
There's the discipline. That's where you've got to just be.
The bizarre thing is with Luiz though is those mistakes. I think they get a bit magnified from time to time, but they invariably happen in a 2 or 3 game spell, and then for 2 or 3 months he won't make a single mistake. So to me, it's basically mental. And how will that get ironed out?
Right,
we'll see. I had one last thing to say about it, Chidge. That maybe it's that we need someone disciplined then to play that Makelele role. Maybe Ramires does go up.
Well, I'm going to get onto that in a minute. In fact, I'm going to get onto it right now. I just put a line under the Luiz thing saying I still think he is going to be our captain one day. I think he's got leadership qualities. But you're right. We do want to talk about the midfield, and I think the first point about the midfield is Lampard. How long can he go on for, Ross?
I've been really impressed with him the past few weeks. I think he's really grown into that. I mean, having played it a little bit last season, he's really grown into that sitting 2 role, and it actually suits him a little bit. But he does need someone energetic alongside him because you do need a bit of mobility there. Well, but he's certainly played excellently, I think.
I want to get onto that in a minute, actually, as well. You'll be reading my mind or the scripts.
One of the two.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I personally felt that Jose would actually try and pick Frank and JT for most of his matches because they are his lieutenants on the pitch, and he trusts them and he knows what they can do and he knows that they bleed blue. But I'm still kind of surprised about the amount of games they're both playing, and I do wonder. I wonder how capable they're going to be. I mean, when we get to like March, when we're at the business end of the season, when we will probably be in for a title or a cup or whatever, and then the two guys that are still the backbone of the team that you're most reliant on may run out of puff, and that does worry me a bit, mate.
I'm not sure about Frank running out of puff, though. I think he's
got a big engine.
Yeah, I think that guy, like Giggs and stuff, will be able to play till he's 40 in the Premier League, and I don't see anything. I wouldn't know he was 35 unless watching him play. Really,
a bit like me. I don't look 73, do I?
No, exactly.
No, I wear it well. I've got a big engine too.
But no, I think he's a brilliant player, and I think he's got a long future. And if he uses him well, he'll have the legs in the set. I think he's fit. He looks after himself.
It's a more disciplined role now as well. He doesn't need to be running up and down. The idea of these two sitting midfielders as they get the ball up to the three highly creative people in front of them, and they're the ones that do all the running in the final third. So,
and going back to your earlier point about the settled back seven or however many, I think it's because Jose's basically trying to say, right, I've got the defence sorted, I'm going to keep picking them with a view to trying to get the attack sorted. He's not trying to change the whole team round at once. So I think going forward we will eventually see Lampard and Terry and maybe one or two of the fullbacks being rested a bit more, but I think for now he's just trying to make sure he's getting the results.
I think the other issue, and I think Darren, you picked up on it, Ross, a minute ago, which is it's actually who plays in the defensive midfield positions, and clearly Jose figured this out in the second half against Tottenham, and it looks to me his preferred, his number one choice for defensive midfielders are Lamps with Ramires. Not Lamps and Mikel. And much as we all love Mikel, I think the consensus is that having Lamps and Mikel together deprives the defensive midfield positions of any energy and dynamism. Whereas you need somebody who has energy and can run with the ball, which is what Ramires does. I mean, would you say that's a fair enough point?
Definitely. And they've got the agility to put their foot in when teams are breaking on us.
Ramires can tackle. Yeah. Lampard can tackle. Lampard can do 50.
What I mean in that respect is that Ramires can be one to diagnose an opposition attack and get his foot in, whereas Lampard and Mikel, they're not quite quick enough to do that.
Yeah,
so I think
it's an energy thing.
Both of them.
Yeah, I agree. Which is another interesting question because it says, well, where does that leave Mikel? Because we've not seen him at all since he had that epiphany in the Tottenham game and suddenly put Lamps and Ramires together.
It was only a game and a half ago.
This is true. Anybody would have thought we were a red top tabloid paper. Mikel's all over. Jose hates Mikel.
And the game before that, he scored, didn't he?
I know. Well, we love him for that.
Does he get for his trouble?
But this is the thing. I wonder about the defensive midfield. I'll pick this up in a minute because actually, about this time in the show when we normally do the fannies, as people out there watching and listening will know, is that we usually slip in a video of naughty people in a pub having a bit of a Chelsea sing-song. And actually, in view of the fact we had no game, and of course none of you lot out there have sent us any clips, I've gone back to the Chidge archive, and as Paul will say, you film them like that, iPhone like this, you film like that, not like that,
yes,
not like that.
Shape of your TV.
Shape of the TV. Very
Landscape,
simple.
not portrait.
Anyway, I did this a few years ago. I basically went around Stamford Bridge about 4 years ago trying to make a little bit of a pilot or a teaser for a TV show I was trying to get, and I got into the So Bar, much missed by many of us. And we filmed a bit in there with a few of the boys and girls in the podcast, some of whom are no longer on the show because they've all been fired. No, not true. But anyway, you might want to have a look at this. You'll like this. A bit of a Chelsea sing-song medley in the So Bar.
We are the Chelsea boys, and if you are a Tottenham fan, surrender or you'll die. We'll follow the Chelsea. Hello, hello. We are the Chelsea boys. Chelsea, we do. We love you, Chelsea. We do. We love you, Chelsea. We do. Oh, Chelsea, we love you.
God, lovely. I'm feeling a bit. So, hang on a minute. Bit misty-eyed. There were some old faces in there, weren't there? And I'm not just talking about Big Phil and Dr. Mart. Dr. Mart, who we miss terribly. He's in Chelsea Television. That was quite fun. You remember that? You were in that.
Yeah, that was years ago.
You remember that?
2007.
You look like you were on something, mate. I tell you.
You haven't changed a bit, Paul.
He hasn't. Your hair was a bit curlier then, a bit more.
Longer.
A bit longer, a bit more. Anyway, listen. The point of that, the reason for showing you that, a little bit of nostalgia, obviously, because we all remember the Sobar, but. The other thing is, of course, we do need your clips. If you've been at the game, or if you've been watching it in the pub, or been at the game and in the pub before and after, then if you see something funny, or you can see a good chant going off, then get your mobile phone out. As Paul said, he's a director. You can learn from him. He's a professional. You get your mobile phone like that, and you that way round. Not that way round, that way round. If you do that, and then you get hold of us, just email us, chelseafancast@gmail.com. Let us know that you've got a video that you want to run in the show, and then I'll get back to you and figure out how we can upload it and get it on the old television. Because we find it very entertaining and it's great fun, particularly for the fannies, for chant of the match. I think it's brilliant for that. Anyway, on with the talk about the football. We were talking about Mikel and Ramires and the defensive midfield pairing before we saw that video. Yeah, so Mikel is not done and dusted then. You still feel he's going to have quite a big role then, Pablo?
Yeah, of course it is, because there's only 3 or 4, if you count SCN, fit central midfielders, and we're going to have a 55-game season. He's going to play a lot of football.
Here's a question for you all, really, which kind of goes on from that, I think, quite nicely, and that's really hand in hand with Evolution Part 2, as I'd like to call this, which is the youngsters to be developed. And I just wonder, looking at, we've lost Van Ginkel, who I think Jose did quite fancy to bring on. And you look at who we have to pair with whom. In other words, have somebody energetic and have somebody slightly different. We've got Ramires as the energy bunny in the midfield, but everybody else is quite similar. I mean, Mikel and Essien, I would say, probably quite similar. So, in terms of the depth of squad and in terms of the youngsters to hopefully bring into the team, what are we going to do with that position? I think Ross this is your area, mate, isn't it?
Well, I think it starts actually with although Chelsea fans don't really rate him, but Emanalo has done a good job in identifying talent. But I think the problem is that quite a few of the players, both in attack and in defence, are very similar. So Jose's just got to work with what he's got. And do I have a solution or an opinion on what he should do? Not really. I think he's just got to keep rotating them. And
Didn't he have Harry's brother Lewis Baker on the bench though for Swindon?
Yeah, he did.
And I remember I moaned about the fact that he didn't bring him on.
Yeah, I think that was injury related. But Baker's more of a number 10 himself.
Yeah.
There's no one in the squad from top to bottom who's got the same kind of athletic ability as Ramires. So I think if he doesn't play, if he doesn't play, then you're going to have to.
I think I said it a few weeks ago. Maybe you could try Kevin De Bruyne there, but it's up to Jose to figure out. And I'm not sure that the squad is 100% balanced at the moment in terms of the options that gives him.
Mobiles off. There's
That's
always
right.
one, isn't
You're
there?
the
There's
producer,
always one. And he's supposed to be a professional.
You want to show
Right.
how it's done.
Okay, I'd like to go to the benches because I've been informed by the gallery. They're also looking a little bit dark. Have you not put money in the meter, Sports Tonight Live? My benches are looking in the shadows over there. Have you got a torch, Chad?
No, I've got a microphone. Will I do?
Oh yeah, that will do very nicely. What do you think about the whole depth? I mean, I know you lot all like the young. I mean, the lot Lizzie and Lauren in particular have got quite an eye on the youth players.
Sounds kind of wrong.
All for the right reasons, I hasten to add. Naughty. That's a joke in there somewhere. But what do you think? I mean, do you think we've got some people coming through that you think Jose might make use of? What do the people in Mixler think about the whole situation? I would love to know.
The question I asked to people on Mixler on Twitter was, firstly, do you think Lampard's worthy of a starting place in the 11? And the answers that I got a bit of telling off really for asking that question.
Quite right too.
And I had to ask.
No,
I wanted
fair
to know
enough.
what they thought.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly. And yes, I can't actually read out what they said, but I got a telling off, and the answer was yes. They do think that he's still worthy of a starting place in the first 11, and they do think that Ramires is best paired with him rather than Mikel. There is a lot of love out there for Mikel, but they just think that Ramires is best paired with Lampard than Mikel is.
Yeah.
If he hadn't have got injured, I would have gone for Van Ginkel.
Yeah.
Definitely. Or
Yeah.
Kevin De Bruyne. I agree with Ross.
I think so, Lizzie.
I don't like Ramires.
I think so. I agree with you.
Lizzie, if you say Van Hinkel enough times, Chidge might realise how to actually pronounce his name.
Van Hinkel.
You always say Van Ginkel, Chidge.
Van Hinkel it is. Who am I to argue with the great Lizzie Derham? But I agree with you about the Mikel thing too. You know, I'm a big fan of Mikel because you saw me right on that, Lizzie, many years ago. But I do think that that Van Ginkel, or whatever his name is. Shall I go all Steve McLaren about this? But you know, I think he would have had a part to play, and I think it was such a shame he got injured because I think he was definitely earmarked for one of those defensive midfield roles. Anyway, listen, we've got a couple of minutes to kind of wrap up this part. Really, what I want to talk about now is, I know we've only gone 7 games. It's a marathon and not a sprint. But you know, where do you think we're going to finish up in the end of the season? Are we title contenders? Will we win a cup? How will we do in the Champions League, Darren? What do you reckon?
Chidge, come on. Right.
Telly, you got to do this kind of stuff,
from
mate.
2 months ago, it'll pretty much from the next couple of games onwards, we won't run away with the league, but we'll be be leading at the old time. It'll be a proper gun to tape finish.
You're not Darren anymore. No, you're like Darren manager. It's like, well, we take the game one game at a time, you know, and we don't look too far ahead, you know. Platitudes, schmatitudes, mate.
Definitely from Christmas onwards, we'll be top of the league. Maybe we'll slip down second occasionally, but we'll win the league.
So bloody.
I can't see he's not doing it. I never could before, and then I don't think that in their first seasons Moyes or Pellegrini are going to be up to much. Moyes especially. Not I'm saying you can read much by early form, but I would have said that regardless if they had won all their games so far this season. And I just don't think anyone out there is as good as Mourinho as a manager. And if Mourinho was managing Man City and Pellegrini at Chelsea, I'd say Man City would win the league. But I think that is the difference. And
I mean, we said this at the beginning of the season. I said this to whoever would be, you know, stupid enough to be listening to me, that, you know, uniquely in football, like I say uniquely, and I'm going to compare him to Ferguson, which is a bit daft, but you know, Ferguson, I reckon, was always worth about 10-15 points a season to United, and I think that Mourinho is the same for us,
but it's also,
and that will be the difference.
Yeah, and it's things like not just from his tactics, but also the influence he puts in things like the ref. And when people say Jose's arrogant, I think he's aware he's arrogant, and it's partly an act because the media love it. They love to talk about Mourinho because he comes out and says these things deliberately, and they know why he's doing it, but they still it's a catch-22 for them. They know why he's saying it, but they've still got to report
love
it.
Well, it sells papers, as they themselves gladly admit. I mean, I quite like the way that he's actually downplaying a lot of things this season. I like that. You know, he's not quite as arrogant as he was. You know, when he turned up to I'm going to win it. Bosh, end of. Now I've got a different brief. I'm trying to develop things. It's all about the long term. He's being very clever, I think, in how he's downplaying it all. Don't you think?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Could be part of the.
That's all I've got to say about that.
That's all I've got to say. But I think, you know, a little bit maybe he's not 100% sure of who he's got because you know, he's not been able to bring in his players that he's bought from the past, like he brought in his Porto players, and he's, you know, he's working with players that he probably has a lot of questions in his head about. You know, Mata being one of them at the beginning of the season. So I think that's part of it.
It's not his team, really, is it?
No, it's not his team. I mean, and that's why I think we're seeing Terry and Lampard, because they can help bring through that the mentality that they've learnt and what he's trying to bring, and Czech as well. You know, these guys really know what Mourinho's about and what he's trying to achieve, and they'll be able to translate that, especially JT being the captain.
Brilliant. And I have to say, I've really enjoyed that. I think I've enjoyed the chat we've had tonight about the football. I told you, it's much better when there's no football to discuss. Right. I've actually really enjoyed that. But I'm going to enjoy the next part even more, because we're going to talk to Paul all about his lovely new film, One, right after the break.